the gods of the void and the deep darkness between the stars. There was a place where light rarely reached. Here floated the worlds of the Celestials, an empire so old and powerful that no one remembered a time before them. They called themselves gods, and they demanded all others call them the same. Their ships were like mountains of steel, bigger than cities, glowing with the light of captured suns. Their voices reached across the galaxy, carried by endless fleets, and their message was always the same: bow, serve, and obey. Any race that refused was erased. Their planets turned to ash, their names removed from history. It had been like this for thousands of years, and in all that time, no one had ever defeated them. In their great halls, the celestial high priests told stories of their own divinity. They said the stars themselves were their servants, and that they could not be challenged, and for countless generations, it was true, because no one dared. On a distant world at the edge of their empire, the Celestials arrived without warning. The people there had built their own cities, had their own leaders, and had never seen a Celestial before. But when the black sky filled with golden ships, they understood quickly who ruled the galaxy. The Celestial commander stood before them, tall and shining in armor of light. He told them their gods had come, and that they must give all their resources, all their young men, and half their food each year. If they did this, they would be spared, and their world would be under divine protection. If they refused, they would be destroyed. The people had no choice, so they bent their knees and gave their offerings. The Celestials left pleased, their ships vanishing into the cold dark. This was how it always went, world after world. No rebellion ever lasted, no army ever won, no voice ever spoke against them for long. But somewhere far beyond their borders, past the maps of the known galaxy, there was a planet the Celestials had never touched. Its name was Earth. To the Celestials, Earth was nothing, just another small blue world in a forgotten arm of the galaxy. But to humans, Earth was home, and humanity had its own history of war, resistance, and survival. And when word of the Celestials finally reached Earth, humanity did not bow. The first contact was almost laughable to the Celestials. A single message from Earth's leaders reached one of their patrol fleets. It was short and simple. Do not enter our space. The Celestials laughed in their golden thrones, for no one spoke to them this way. They decided to send a small fleet to remind the humans of their place. But the humans did not send a fleet to meet them. They sent one ship. It was called the HMS Retribution, a warship built in secret. The Celestials had never seen anything like it. Its hull was black, swallowing light, its lines sharp and strange, its engines silent even as it moved. No banners, no glowing gold, no sign of worship, just a silent predator in the dark. When the Celestial Patrol hailed the human ship, demanding surrender, the reply came in a calm voice: "Turn back or be destroyed." The Celestials laughed again, thinking it was a joke. They opened fire, unleashing beams that could melt cities. The beams hit the human ship and vanished, as if absorbed by the hull. The Celestials had no time to wonder what happened before the HMS Retribution fired. A single shot tore through their lead battleship like it was made of paper. The rest of the patrol fleet died in silence, their ships breaking apart with surgical precision. In the grand temple of the Celestials, high priests listened to the reports in disbelief. A single human ship had erased a Celestial patrol in under 5 minutes. They called it a trick, an accident, a lie spread by rebels. But deep in their hearts, some of them felt something they had not known for centuries: fear. And fear, for those who called themselves gods, was the beginning of the end. The human warship did not retreat. It moved deeper into celestial space, calm, steady, unstoppable. Every world it passed sent warnings to the Celestial High Command. Every commander it met fell in battle, and the people who had once prayed to the Celestials began whispering a new name: not gods, but humans. And those whispers began to spread, carried on the winds of rebellion. Far away, in the shadowed bridge of the HMS Retribution, the human captain stood silent. He did not see himself as a savior or a god. He was simply doing what had to be done. And somewhere in the dark ahead, the so-called gods of the void waited, unaware that their age of power was about to end, unaware that one human ship was enough to shatter their 1,000-year delusion, the arrival of the human. Warship, the great hall of the Celestial High Command, was alive with arrogance. Priests in robes of gold spoke of the patrol fleet's destruction as if it were nothing more than a storm at sea. They claimed the human ship had been lucky, that chance had favored it once, but would not again. Their admirals nodded, their confidence built on centuries of victory. They had never faced an enemy who fought differently from the rest. They could not imagine that this small, quiet world called Earth could produce anything dangerous, yet, even as they laughed, their eyes betrayed unease. The reports from surviving witnesses, few as they were, told of a ship that moved like it was alive, weapons that struck without warning, shields that swallowed light itself. One officer swore that when the human ship appeared, the stars around it dimmed as though afraid. The priests dismissed him as superstitious, but some commanders remembered the look in his eyes, the look of someone who had seen death and lived to speak of it. And so, the Celestials decided to end the matter quickly. They sent an escort fleet of 12 warships, each large enough to flatten continents. The mission was simple: find the human warship, force it to follow, and present it in chains. Before the High Command, in the void between stars, the escort fleet moved in formation. Their hulls shone with golden light, their weapons charged and ready. They sent their message into the darkness, a voice heavy with pride. "This is the Celestial Fleet. You are in our domain. Lower your weapons and prepare to be boarded." The reply was not what they expected. It was not loud, not threatening, but calm, almost quiet. "Stand down or be destroyed." The words were spoken in a tone that made several Celestial officers pause. Not because of the threat itself, but because it sounded like a promise. No fear, no hesitation, just certainty. The admiral in command laughed, ordering his fleet to advance. "Destroy it," he said, thinking the gods would never fall to a single ship. But the HMS Retribution was not like the fleets the Celestials had crushed before. It moved with unnatural precision, its black hull blending into the void. Their weapons fired in unison, beams of pure energy cutting through the darkness. Yet, when they hit, the human ship absorbed them, the surface rippling like water before returning to perfect stillness. Then came the first human strike. A single railgun slug crossed the space between them faster than the eye could track. One of the Celestial cruisers split in half, its molten core spilling into the void. Panic rippled through the alien formation. The human ship fired again. Then again, each shot finding its mark with surgical accuracy. Within 3 minutes, 5 Celestial ships were gone. The rest tried to scatter, but the human ship was faster. It was as though it knew where each enemy would move before they moved. The admiral shouted orders, but his voice was drowned out by the alarms filling every deck. Shields failed, engines died, and one by one the golden giants fell silent. When it was over, the void was littered with broken hulls drifting in silence. The HMS Retribution moved through the wreckage without slowing, its black hull untouched. It sent no message, made no boast, simply passed into deeper celestial space as if nothing had happened. Back in the High Command, silence fell when the report arrived. The Admiral's final words, recorded before his ship exploded, were simple. "They see us," the priests argued, claiming the humans used forbidden technology. Some whispered that perhaps the humans were gods themselves. But the most dangerous whisper was the one that spread among the common people of the Empire. If one human ship could destroy a celestial fleet, then maybe the Celestials were not gods at all. On a mining world far from the capital, workers passed the story in hushed voices. They spoke of a dark ship that hunted the golden ones like prey. On a slave colony, A child repeated the name of the humans over and over, smiling for the first time in her life. The story spread faster than the priests could silence it, and every time the name human was spoken, the Celestials lost another grain of power. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the HMS Retribution, Captain Elias Ward studied the star map. He marked the locations of celestial fortresses, supply depots, and shipyards. His crew worked in silence, every movement precise. They knew they were deep in enemy space, surrounded by fleets that outnumbered them thousands to one. But they also knew something the Celestials did not. This war was not about numbers. It was about breaking a lie, and when lies broke, empires fell. The captain gave the order to proceed to their next target. The engines came alive with a soundless hum. In the darkness, the human warship moved on, a shadow among the stars, and somewhere ahead, the gods of the void were waiting, still certain of their immortality, still unaware that one warship could end their reign. The weapon they couldn't understand, the celestial capital world, was a place of shining towers and endless temples. It was here that the High Command gathered in secret, far from the eyes of common citizens. They sat in a great chamber lit by the glow of 100 artificial suns. Golden armor and jeweled robes reflected the light, but no amount of shine could hide the tension in the air. The destruction of the escort fleet had not been erased from their minds. 12 warships gone, not to an armada, not to a siege, but to a single dark vessel. And no one understood how the celestial engineers studied every fragment of wreckage. Recovered from the battle site, pieces of shattered hull floated in the laboratories, but the weapons that had torn them apart left no known signature. There were no scorch marks from plasma, no melted edges from laser beams. Instead, the metal had been punched clean through, as if the projectiles carried the force of a collapsing star. Some scientists whispered that the humans had found a way to fold space into their weapons. Others said it was sorcery, something beyond the reach of science. The priests of the Empire dismissed the idea of science altogether, calling it heresy to suggest mortals could rival the gods. Yet the unease grew when reports began to arrive from other sectors. 2 more celestial patrols had vanished, one near the trade routes of the Orion Spur, another close to the slave world of Veraxis. Both were destroyed in exactly the same way. Without warning, without survivors, without even a distress call, the human warship struck like a phantom, and in each case, the black hull was seen only for seconds before the destruction began. The High Command ordered their greatest minds to design a countermeasure. They brought in the weapons masters, the shield architects, and the tactical prophets. They spoke of new energy barriers, of ship-hunting drones, of gravitational traps, but for each plan they made, the engineers asked the same question. How can you defend against something you cannot track? The human ship seemed to know the exact weaknesses of every celestial vessel. Its shots were not random, they were precise. It targeted reactors, ammunition holds, and bridge sections with perfect accuracy. This was not luck, this was knowledge. Knowledge the Celestials did not know how the humans could have. In the outer sectors, fear began to turn into rebellion. Alien captains who once knelt before the Celestials now questioned their orders. On mining stations, workers sabotaged shipments meant for the Imperial fleets. And always, the whispers came back to the same thing, the human warship. To the oppressed, it was hope. To the Empire, it was a nightmare that would not end. The Celestials decided to prove their power in one grand show. They summoned the Armada of 1,000 suns. It was a fleet so large that its engines lit entire star systems like dawn breaking. Ships the size of moons drifted into formation, their golden hulls blazing in the dark. The High Command called it a cleansing. The humans would be crushed in full view of the galaxy. They broadcast the operation on every open channel, certain that their divine image would be restored. But deep in the void, the HMS Retribution was already moving. Inside its silent bridge, Captain Elias Ward studied the enemy's massive formation. He saw the patterns in their movements, the gaps between their lines. His crew worked with quiet, Focus, running calculations, adjusting weapon calibrations. Every move was deliberate. Every decision part of a greater plan. They were not here to match the enemy's numbers. They were here to show the galaxy that numbers meant nothing against precision. The Celestial Armada expected a direct approach. They waited for the human ship to come roaring into their guns. Instead, the Retribution appeared at the edge of the formation. Its weapon struck before the Celestials even realized it was in range. One of the great carriers exploded instantly, a chain reaction tearing through its entire deck. Two more ships lost engines in the opening minutes, spinning helplessly into the void. The Celestials fired back with everything they had. The space around the human ship lit up like a second sun. But again, the black hull absorbed the blows, the ripples across its armor fading almost as soon as they appeared. For hours, the human vessel moved through the formation like a shadow among giants. It never stayed still, never gave them a clear shot. Every round it fired destroyed something. Vital, a command deck here, a shield generator there. By the time the Celestials realized they could not trap it, their perfect formation was broken. The humans had no interest in fighting every ship. They fought with precision, dismantling the enemy piece by piece, until the once mighty Armada began to scatter on the capital world. The people watched in silence as the gods were humbled before their eyes. The priests cut the broadcast, but it was too late. The image of burning golden ships was burned into the galaxy's memory. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the Celestials saw their own weakness. They still did not understand the human weapon, and that ignorance was more dangerous than any fleet. Somewhere in the dark beyond their borders, the HMS Retribution disappeared into the void once more. No boasts, no claims of victory. Just the quiet certainty of a predator moving toward its next target. And though the Celestials still called themselves gods, they could not shake the truth growing in their hearts. If one ship could do this, what would happen when more arrived? The sky burned. The day began in silence. No storms, no strange cosmic events. Only the quiet emptiness of deep space. But on the edge of the Celestial Empire, silence was about to end. The HMS Retribution drifted in the shadow of a dead moon, its black hull blending into the darkness. Inside the bridge, Captain Elias Ward stood over the tactical display. His crew watched the glowing symbols that represented the Armada of 1,000 suns. Hundreds of golden icons moving toward a single point. That point was them. The Celestials had committed everything, from the smallest corvettes to their titanic capital ships. Every vessel was present. The priests had declared this day sacred, a day when the gods would strike down the human blasphemer. They had ordered the battle to be broadcast to every loyal world. In the temples, crowds gathered to watch, chanting in praise of the Empire. In the mines and slave pits, others watched too, but their faces carried hope instead of faith. The human ship's sensors lit up with enemy signatures. The void was crowded with massive warships, their gold and silver hulls shining like suns. The Retribution's crew felt the weight of the coming fight. They were alone, deep in enemy territory, against a force that could blot out the stars. Yet there was no fear in their voices. They trusted their ship, their captain, and the precision that had brought them this far. The celestial fleet closed in from all directions. Formations shifted, shields charged, and weapons powered up. Over the comes a deep, commanding voice echoed. "Human vessel, you are surrounded. Surrender and you may be shown mercy." The captain gave a short reply, calm and unshaken. "You will have none to give." The first wave of fire came like the opening roar of a storm. Golden beams, plasma bursts, and torpedoes crossed the void. The space around the Retribution became a blinding storm of light. Yet the ship danced between the strikes. Some hits connected, but the black armor rippled and sealed in seconds. Then the Retribution struck back. A railgun shot, faster than thought, tore through the lead battleship. Its engines went critical, the explosion lighting up space like a new sun. Missiles followed, guided by targeting systems so precise they curved around debris and found hidden weak points. One celestial carrier lost its hangar decks in a single hit. Spilling fire and fragments into the void, the retribution moved like a shadow, never staying still, never in the same place twice. The battle spread across the system. The Celestials tried to encircle the human ship, but every time they thought they had trapped it, it slipped away. Its counterattacks were not random. Each shot crippled another section of the fleet. Destroy the command ship here. Cut the supply ship there. Take out the shield generator somewhere else. The effect was devastating. The perfect golden wall of the celestial formation collapsed into chaos. From the bridge of the flagship, High Admiral Veyros shouted orders. His voice carried anger but also something new, desperation. He had never faced an enemy that refused to follow the expected rules of battle. This was not war the way the Celestials knew it. This was a hunt, and they were the prey. The Retribution's crew worked like one-mind weapons crews reloaded without being told. Navigation adjusted course by instinct. In the engineering deck, the ship's reactors pulsed with steady power. Captain Ward stood calm, his eyes fixed on the enemy fleet's weak points. Every strike, every maneuver was part of the same design. Break their spirit as much as their ships. As the hours passed, wreckage filled the void. Golden ships burned, their light dimming as their power failed. Some tried to ram the Retribution, but it slid aside and cut them apart in passing. Others fled outright, their captains abandoning the divine cause. By the battle's 4th hour, the Armada of 1,000 suns was no longer an armada. It was a scattering of survivors, their pride shattered on the capital world. The priests ordered the broadcast cut. The people had seen too much already. The sight of burning celestial ships was a wound that no speech could heal. In secret, rebellion leaders began sending encrypted messages to the humans. The myth of the gods was crumbling. And all it had taken was one warship in the final moments of the battle. The Retribution slowed, its railguns fell silent, its engines humming low. The few remaining celestial ships drifted away. Afraid to fire, Captain Ward gave no victory speech, no declaration. The ship simply turned and vanished into the darkness, leaving behind only the memory of a day when the sky itself seemed to burn. The message to the galaxy. In the days after the battle, the galaxy was not silent. News traveled faster than any warship, faster than any official statement from the Celestial High Command. Every trading vessel, every smuggler, every rebel courier carried the same story. The human warship had faced the Armada of 1,000 suns and survived. Not only survived, but scattered it, breaking the unbreakable. It was a story too big to be hidden. And in the farthest corners of the galaxy, the so-called gods were now seen as mortal. The Celestials tried to control the narrative. They told their citizens the battle had been a test, a minor engagement. They claimed the human ship had fled in fear and would never return. But their lies cracked when survivors from the battle spoke. Some were smugglers who had been caught in the crossfire. Others were deserters from the Celestial fleet. Their words spread through black markets and pirate stations. They spoke of a ship that moved like a living thing, of weapons that struck with impossible precision. They spoke of a captain who never raised his voice, who commanded with silence and calm. And they spoke of the golden ships burning, one after another, until the sky itself seemed aflame. On the bridge of the HFY Retribution, Captain Elias Ward watched the spread of the reports with cold calculation. He had not planned to become a symbol. He was here for a mission, to shatter the Celestial Empire's image of invincibility. But now, he saw the opportunity in the chaos. Send it, he told his communications officer, and the message went out. Not to a single world, but to all of them. The message was simple, spoken in the same steady tone the captain had used in battle. They are no gods, only rulers who demand obedience through fear. They have no right to your worlds, your lives, or your children. They will fall, as all tyrants fall. And we will see to it. The words carried no threats. No insults, only truth. And that truth cut deeper than any weapon. The Celestials were furious. They jammed frequencies, hunted transmission relays, and even executed citizens caught repeating the message. But it was too late. The words had already been recorded, copied, and sent through hidden channels. Rebel worlds played it in their streets. Pirate crews blasted it over open coms before raids. Even in the great temples of the Celestials, there were whispers among the servants. The gods had bled, and everyone had seen it. On the slave world of Varaxis, a child looked up at the night sky and asked her mother if the black ship would come. For them, on a mining colony near the galactic rim, workers painted the outline of the Retribution's hull on the walls, on pirate stations. Captains raised their drinks to the humans before going on raids against celestial supply lines. The name of Earth, once unknown, began to spread with the weight of legend. The Celestial High Command met in desperation. Their admirals argued for massive retaliation. Their priests demanded the destruction of every world suspected of supporting the humans. But the politicians, those who counted wealth more than faith, warned them, the more they crushed, the more the galaxy would resist. The humans had not just won a battle, they had changed the balance of fear. The Retribution did not linger in one place. It struck and moved on, hitting supply routes, shipyards, and communications hubs. Each attack was followed by the same message: they are no gods. On worlds that had never dared resist, uprisings began, small at first, just stolen supplies or hidden weapons, but growing, fueled by the knowledge that the Celestials could be beaten. The priests called for the captain's head. They promised rewards beyond measure for anyone who could bring them the human warship. But their bounty hunters never returned. Some vanished without trace. Others returned broken, their ships crippled. And each failure made the legend grow stronger in the shadows of the galaxy. Rebellion leaders began to coordinate. For the first time in centuries, alien races that had hated each other sat at the same table. They shared intelligence, resources, and plans, and always, the humans were the rallying point. The Retribution became more than a ship. It became a promise that the Celestials would fall. Captain Ward knew what was coming. The Celestials would not allow this to go on forever. They would send everything they had to crush him. But that was exactly what he wanted, because every fleet they sent after him was a fleet not guarding their worlds. And every victory he won was another crack in their empire. In the capital's grand temple, the high priest stood before the statues of their so-called gods. For the first time in centuries, they prayed not for victory, they prayed for survival. The fall of the Celestials, the cracks in the celestial empire began as whispers. Whispers turned to questions, and questions turned to defiance. On worlds once ruled by golden fleets, the people no longer bowed at the sight of celestial banners. They remembered the images of burning warships, the words of the human captain, "They are no gods." And with each day, those words became heavier than the chains that had bound them for centuries. The Retribution moved like a shadow through the galaxy. It never stayed long in one place. One week it destroyed a weapons foundry on the industrial moon of Corvin. The next week it crippled a communications hub that connected half the empire. Every attack was clean, precise, and fast. By the time the celestial fleet arrived, the human ship was already gone, leaving nothing but wreckage and the growing fear that it could appear anywhere, anytime. Celestial admirals tried to hunt the Retribution. They sent squadrons into deep space, set traps with decoy fleets. But the human vessel always seemed to know their plans before they happened. Some began to suspect spies. Others blamed treachery among their own officers. The High Command ordered loyalty checks across the military. Hundreds of commanders were executed, accused of working with the humans. But the attacks did not stop. In fact, they became more frequent. In the capital city, the temples still stood tall. But the grand processions of the priests were no longer met with cheers. The people bowed because they had to, not because they believed. In the markets, Merchants lowered their voices and asked travelers if they had heard news of the human ship. In the slave districts, the name Retribution was carved into walls. Even children whispered it like a charm to keep the Celestials away. The first real rebellion erupted on the world of Nyrith. It began with workers refusing to load weapons onto celestial transports. When soldiers came to force them, the workers fought back with stolen tools and mining explosives. The Retribution appeared in orbit 2 days later. It destroyed the Celestial garrison's command ship in a single strike. Without leadership, the soldiers surrendered. For the first time in generations, Nyrith declared itself free. That victory spread across the galaxy faster than any official broadcast. One by one, other worlds followed. Some fought openly. Others simply stopped sending tribute to the Empire. The Celestials tried to crush these uprisings, but every time they moved their fleets to one sector, the Retribution struck in another. It was a war of shadows, and the humans were winning inside the High Command. The arguments grew louder. Admirals demanded more ships. Priests demanded more sacrifices. The ruling council could not agree on a single strategy. Some wanted to retreat to the core worlds and rebuild. Others still clung to the belief that they could destroy the humans with one decisive strike. But no matter their decision, their power was slipping away. Captain Elias Ward watched it all unfold from the quiet bridge of the Retribution. He knew the Empire was falling faster than anyone expected. But he also knew that cornered predators were the most dangerous. The Celestials would not accept defeat. Quietly, they would lash out, perhaps in desperation, and that was when the humans had to be ready. The next blow to the Empire came not from the Retribution, but from within. In the Outer Rim, a celestial admiral named Rinvus defected. He brought with him the coordinates of hidden supply caches, shipyards, and military staging grounds. With this knowledge, the humans could strike at the very heart of the celestial war machine. The Retribution wasted no time. In a single month, 3 major shipyards burned. 2 grand temples, symbols of celestial divinity, were reduced to rubble, and the Empire's production of warships dropped by nearly half. By now, the celestial myth was in ruins. Even their loyal soldiers began to desert. Some took their ships and joined rebel fleets. Others vanished into neutral space, never to return. The High Command's once proud fleet shrank, not because it was destroyed entirely, but because it could no longer be maintained. Fear was not only in their enemies, it was in their own ranks. Across the galaxy, the name of the Retribution became more than a story. It became a movement. Rebel ships began painting their hulls black in imitation. Flags bearing the human ship's silhouette appeared on stations and colonies. It was no longer just about the humans. It was about freedom in the Grand Temple of the celestial capital. The high priest stood before their council. For the first time in their long reign, they admitted the truth. The gods had fallen. The Empire would not survive the year unless something unimaginable happened. But what they did not know was that the most unimaginable moment was yet to come. The Retribution was already on a course toward the capital. And this time, it was not coming to send a message. It was coming to end an empire. The legend of the human warship, the celestial capital, was a world built to impress. Golden towers reached for the sky. Massive temples shone with the light of captured suns from orbit. The planet looked like a jewel wrapped in shimmering rings of defense stations. For thousands of years, no enemy ship had ever come close to it. But that age of safety was over. On the edge of the system, the HMS Retribution emerged from the darkness. Its black hull absorbed the light of the stars, making it almost invisible. Behind it, no fleet followed. The humans had brought only this one ship. The Celestials had expected an armada. They could not understand why a single vessel dared to face their last defenses. The High Command was in chaos. Some admirals ordered every gun in the system to fire at once. Others demanded the ship be captured so its technology could be studied. The priests screamed for its destruction, calling it the greatest insult to the gods. But their shouting was drowned out by the alarms. The Retribution was already moving. Defense stations opened fire. Beams of energy lit the void, turning space into a storm of gold and white. Missiles streaked through the darkness, each one capable of breaking a moon in half. But the human ship moved like flowing shadow. Every shot that hit rippled across its armor before vanishing. Every missile that came close was destroyed before it reached its target. The Retribution struck back with precision. Railgun rounds punched through the cores of the defense platforms. One by one, they went dark, spinning lifelessly in orbit. Missiles tore open the shields of the planetary defense grid. The celestial command ships tried to form a blockade, but the human vessel cut through them like a knife through silk. Within an hour, the outer defenses were gone. The capital cities. People, once told that their gods were invincible, now looked up at the night sky and saw explosions. Some ran to the temples, praying for salvation. Others smiled quietly, knowing the end of the empire was near. In the high command chamber, the last surviving admirals made a desperate choice. They ordered the fleet to retreat to the far side of the planet, not to protect the city, but to protect themselves. The priests were left alone in their golden halls, clutching relics that no longer inspired fear. The Retribution descended into low orbit, its weapons locked on the Grand Temple at the center of the capital. Captain Elias Ward stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the target. He did not speak of vengeance or glory. He simply gave the order. Fire. The shot struck with the force of a falling star. The Grand Temple's golden dome shattered, sending fragments raining over the city. The explosion ripped through the foundation. When the smoke cleared, nothing remained but a blackened crater. And with that, the heart of the Celestial Empire was gone across the galaxy. The news spread like wildfire. The gods had fallen. The Empire's last symbol of divine power had been destroyed by a single human warship. Rebellions erupted openly now. Worlds declared independence without fear of retribution from the Celestials. The few surviving Celestial fleets scattered into hiding. Some surrendered, others became pirates. But none spoke of being gods again. The Retribution did not state a rule. It did not claim the capital or demand tribute. After the final strike, the ship vanished into the void. Some said it returned to Earth. Others believed it still traveled the galaxy, watching over the newly freed worlds in the years that followed. The story of the human warship became legend. Bards sang of the black vessel that broke the chains of empires. Children played games pretending to be its captain or crew. Rebel fleets painted their ships in black to honor its memory, and in the quiet corners of space, old smugglers would lean across tables and swear they had once seen it passing silently between the stars. The Celestial Empire faded into history. Its temples fell into ruin. Its throne worlds reclaimed by those it had once enslaved. The name Celestial became a warning told to children, a reminder of what happens to those who think themselves gods. And the name Retribution became something greater. Not just a ship, not just a mission, but a promise. A promise that no matter how powerful a tyrant may seem, no matter how impossible freedom may look, there's always a shadow in the dark. A shadow that will strike when the time is right, and when it does, even the gods will fall, and somewhere, in the endless black of space, a single warship drifts silently, its weapons at rest, its engines quiet, waiting for the day it will be needed again, waiting for the day another empire dares to call itself divine.